Alright, 18th century. And you know, I just wore this in the last video, so I should probably change. Just because we're under a quarantine doesn't mean we shouldn't have standards. That's better. Okay, 18th century capsule wardrobe. I swear I was going to do the shift tutorial next. I just have no mental energy for that project and I don't know why, so here we are. So for these videos, I designed a capsule wardrobe of 12 pieces set in a particular era. And for the 18th century, I'm going to do similar to the medieval video to where I'm not really focusing in on one particular decade in styles and trends, just more of the general overview. Maybe go back later and do videos with more narrow time periods, but for now I just wanted to do 18th century and everything I love in 18th century. So for 18th century, there is too much to love about the decade, era, century. So for 18th century, there is too much to love about the era to fit it all into one video. So here are the specific inspirations I drew from for these 12 pieces. This is a modernized Outlander design that somebody else did, and for the life of me, I could not figure out who the artist was. I wasn't really sure how I was going to do an 18th century modernized capsule, but when I saw this piece of art and it's done kind of in a 50s style, it just kind of was like, okay, it all clicked into place. For one of the pieces, I'm going to make a jacket based roughly off of this one. I like it because it looks just very comfortable and airy and summery. And I like it because you could use a reversible or removable stomacher there to get a little bit more versatility. I'm looking at this dress because I really love the pattern of it, and I love how with the color scheme, you could see it working well with either this blue skirt, you could see it with a basic white skirt, you could see it with a pink skirt. I feel like it's just a very versatile color scheme. I'm also looking at this green dress from the Marie Antoinette movie, and I know that this one isn't the most historically accurate, but the reason I love it is because it can be broken down into 3 separate pieces. This overdress, this stomacher piece, and this petticoat. And each of those 3 separate pieces could be used very versatilely in other outfits. I'm also looking at this Outlander still, mostly at the color scheme. I really love this deep, rich brown bodice with this more reddish skirt. I'm also looking at 18th century bed gowns because I feel like it's kind of a fun mix-up. They just look so comfortable and they're a lot less structured than the other 18th century bodices I'm going to be going with. And I love the cross front because usually we associate that with exclusively Asian-inspired fashion history, but I love that it does actually exist in 18th century Europe and America too. And then for the last one, I'm looking at Bernadette's modernized dress because apparently I can't make a single video without referencing Bernadette. This is the initial design layout I came up with, which I usually don't bother to show you because it changes so much as I'm actually doing the art and putting pieces together, but we shall see. I'm looking at possibly 4 petticoats, 3 different bodices, a dress, a couple of overdresses, this one more like a jacket, the bed skirt, and then a belt. So first we need to template the silhouette. It's good to set where the waistline will be and make a couple peak options. Then lay out a few different skirt lengths, the sides of the skirt, the sides and sleeves of the bodice, the neckline, keeping it all very closely fitted with the stays. Once the silhouette template is made, I can make the first petticoat. And I think it's time to come up with a color palette. I usually tend more towards earth tones, but I think I want to keep this one a little bit lighter and more pastel because that's kind of what they liked. So give it a couple different red shades, a couple of different blue shades, maybe a natural color, a green, and a yellow. Then for the first bodice, I'm going to make a very simple sleeveless one, kind of like the one I made for my bridesmaid's dress in the last video. Something that's structured to give the right silhouette, but is simple and sleeveless and pretty easy to pass off as modern clothes. For the next piece, I want to make that open gown. This one is going to button up the front, and I would probably want to do more accurate 18th century sleeves. I think we're going to make this one in the dark navy, and then it's going to be decorated with a print later on. Then for the next piece, let's make the robe a la Bernadette. Pretty similar to how hers was, but with slightly shorter sleeves, and then I kind of like to do a pinked fabric trim along the neckline and the sleeves. And then for now, we'll just make that one pink as a placeholder. For the next piece, let's make that laced up jacket. This one's also going to have short sleeves, mostly because it just looks like it would be so comfortable as a summer piece. This one would have side seams, not for princess seams, but in order to create the split tabs. And then the front would be laced up with a contrasting ribbon for even more color variation. The stomacher would be a completely separate piece, and it would be double-sided so that you could have 2 different variations. This one I would probably make out of a cotton print and then line and linen. If I was going to make it for summer, I would try to put just a minimal amount of boning in it to see if I could get the right silhouette without having to wear stays or anything underneath. And then for the next, let's make the brown Outlander-inspired bodice. And that one I would definitely make with a nice, warm, textured wool. And then let's go ahead and make that long sleeve jacket. This one has kind of an interesting collar. It also has side seams up the front, not for the purpose of princess seams, but in order to have a contrasting facing for the collar. It buttons up the front with double rows of buttons. It also has a buttoned cuff for the sleeves. And then I also want to make a belt. Just a very simple brown leather belt like probably everybody has in their closet, but something that could pair with the skirts, which means that I would probably want to put some kind of belt loops on the skirts. And then to make the bedgown, kind of nice and loose and drapey but gathered in at the waist, either by the belt or by tucking it into a skirt. Okay, so yesterday I finished the base outlines for 11 different pieces, and I'm already kind of starting to see pieces that aren't working out how I thought they would and I might want to replace. And the big one is I think that this long sleeve jacket, I meant it more as a layering jacket piece, but it's not really good for that. And I'm thinking that it's just not going to be that versatile and I might be better off swapping it out with something else. And then I'm also remembered that I'm supposed to be doing pants, like one pair of pants with each at least. Maybe something along the lines of the men's breeches, but I don't think that like the drop front flap thing, since this is a women's wardrobe and that's not a super useful feature to women. But I think today I'm going to focus on patterning first. We'll see. For the next piece, I want to make a white petticoat with an embroidered eyelet lace hem. And I want to make that because one, I feel like that kind of fabric is pretty easy to find. And two, It's very versatile and it would work well for a lot of different time periods. So to make this, it kind of turned into a confusing process because how do you illustrate white embroidery on a white petticoat with a white background? I first made my motif, and then I made the border edge and I set that to a repeat, and then I turned it into a pattern brush. The pattern brush turned out looking a little bit weird because it kind of folds over itself. Even though it's not perfect, especially when you look up close, I think it's still better because it kind of looks like fabric that's hanging and draped and folded versus just a flat strip. So I ended up outlining the embroidery in a light gray to make it kind of stand out. And then I outlined just the bottom edge in black to kind of help finish off the outline of the skirt. Hey, on that note, I have a question and I require a response, so get ready to type. You may have noticed if you've been watching my videos that I'm reasonably competent with Adobe Illustrator, but what you don't know is that the way I learned Adobe Illustrator, about 90% of it, was through doing fabric design. That's actually the way I've earned the majority of my income pretty much since I got out of high school. To do it perfectly historically accurate, it needs to be hand painted. It would still require digitization beforehand in order to get the design layouts, and then afterwards in order to cut them out and Photoshop them and make the repeat. I think that if I did it right, I do have the skills to do a very professional reproduction. However, the conundrum I'm having is if that's really the right direction to go, because the other option is to basically make the fabric prints all on Illustrator. The benefits of that is basically versatility because it would be, snap easy to change the color scheme and do one-off colors, custom colors. And my problem with the historical reproductions, especially 18th century, is they are almost all just the white floral vine patterns. And it's already so hard to find historical fabric, but then when you do find it and it all looks so the same, bland, it all runs together, it's really frustrating. And if I did stick with Adobe Illustrator, for each pattern I did, I could make an infinite number of color variations so that just kind of widen that pool a lot. The downside of leaving it all on Adobe Illustrator is that you do lose a lot of the texture. If I was going to recreate a very time-consuming, historically accurate print, I would want to use it on a historically accurate reproduction piece, which would require a lot of yardage, which would be a very expensive custom fabric printing project. But on the flip side of that, if I was making an Adobe Illustrator version, it would be for a more history-bounding project with a shorter, less full skirt. It would be expensive still, but for that small amount of yardage, it would be doable, and I would do it. So I guess my question is, I really want to know people's priorities. Are you more interested in perfect historical recreations, or are you more interested in the historical feel and aesthetic, but more versatility and more uniqueness, basically? Either way, it would be a very time-invested project. There's a lot of people that do want to make this stuff and do struggle to find fabric, and I have been that person. And if it could be useful to people, it would be worthwhile. Okay, yesterday I did not get nearly as much done as I wanted to. I spent most of the day and most of this morning working on this chintz vine pattern. So that turned out, I think it turned out pretty good. I brought it over here and used it on this bodice. I also made an eyelet lace petticoat based off of this eyelet lace, which I have been saving for pretty much the exact same project. And then I used that same vine chintz pattern on the robe a la Bernadette. But I'm also now rethinking that dress because if I was going to just make an 18th century dress, this is what I would want to make. But for the purposes of a capsule wardrobe, I feel like a dress like this is too limiting because it's not like some of the other capsules where you have jackets and other things that can mix up the dresses. In this case, it would be pretty much a standalone piece, so I'm thinking that I might break it into two and make it a skirt and a different bodice, but I feel like this bodice is too close to the other bodice with the same fabric. I need to figure out how I'm going to do it differently, and then I still need to digitize the pants. I think I'm going to retire the bedgown design too, because as a piece it's cool, but it's just not the structured 18th century style that I'm trying to milk here. So I think instead what I want to do is the stays, which she's been wearing underneath this whole time, I kind of want to figure out a way to turn that into a bodice so that it could be worn under or over an outfit like the original stays could be. I would love to finish this project today, but I don't know if that is a reality that's going to happen. Okay, so I am almost done, finally. I just have a few little finishing details, which hopefully I can get done this morning so I can actually get going on the video. So I made the pants and almost immediately decided that I hated them and took them back off, so apologies to people who really like to see a pants option. It's just not going to happen this time. Maybe at some point I will get bored with all of the available time periods and want to go and revisit time periods and do more masculine versions or, you know, alternative versions, but I don't know when that will be because there are a lot of time periods. Okay, here we go. You might have noticed that the color palette evolved quite a lot as I went along. I started out with a lot more options and then eventually I narrowed it down to just 6, but I found that that worked way better as far as trying to make everything match and versatile with each other. And then for our capsule, here we go. There are 4 petticoats. There is a red silk petticoat. This teal one I kind of see being more linen. We have a cotton chintz print and then a white eyelet petticoat. And then to go over top of it, there is a sleeveless bodice out of the same teal fabric. There is a brown wool bodice. There is another cotton chintz print that's laced up. And then there is a bodice with the same cotton chintz print as the petticoat. And then we have one dress with a split skirt that buttons up the front out of another cotton chintz print. And then to go with the capsule, there is a pair of stays/jumps that could be worn either as a structural piece or as a bodice. And then there is a belt and there is a pair of shoes based off of the American Duchess Kensington shoes. So all of these outfits I'm going to structure over top of a shift of some kind. And I'm not including the shift in the capsule because there are a lot of different types of shifts you could wear, either for coming up with different outfit combinations or according to your own comfort level. Okay, so first let's see how each bodice looks with each skirt. If we're using the jumps as a bodice, I feel like that's definitely pushing the limits of social acceptability, but I would do it. However, if the jumps are tucked into the skirt and worn with a belt, I feel like that works for modern just a little bit better. Now let's see them with the teal bodice. Alright, with the teal on teal, we have matchy-matchy, and I think that that looks really good. It looks very sleek, and I feel like it would work very well modern, because it is a very simple dress. It just has that silhouette. Same thing with the teal bodice on the eyelet lace skirt. I feel like that one is there's something really clean looking about that. I really like that one. With the chintz skirt, I think that it's getting a little bit busy, but you could still get away with it. And then I do really like it with the red skirt, and I would wear it, but it is kind of pushing that boundary again. Now with the printed bodice, this one was designed to go with the floral petticoat, so they're the same fabric. I ended up separating them because I just felt like it gave you more versatility that way. It looks really, really great with the teal, the floral, and the red skirts. The cream and the white is another one that I think that, you know, it would have been perfectly acceptable back then. It's a little bit weird nowadays, but I don't think it's too far over that line. Then we have the brown wool bodice, which I was really oscillating back and forth on whether I should make it long sleeve to make it very, very winter appropriate, but I ended up keeping the elbow length sleeves because of reasons. I like this one with all of them. It's very, very contrasty with the white, but I don't mind that. And the brown shade looks great with the teal, the floral, and the red. So I really like that bodice. Next, let's try the printed dress. Okay, I think this one looks great. We're not used to seeing multiple prints in one outfit, but in 18th century that was pretty acceptable as far as what I can tell, and I don't know, I like it. And for the last bodice, there is the laced bodice. And this one would have a 2-sided stomacher, so you could get a little bit more versatility that way. And I feel like the teal stomacher works with all of the petticoats, except maybe the red. I mean, it's not too bad. I do prefer the matching floral with the red. Now I want to talk to you about shifts because I couldn't really fit this all into one capsule. I've just got ideas for all of the different things you could do with shifts, because you know how they would have the lace tuckers, they would have the fichus, they would have the elegantes. They had all of these different little bits that you could either tuck in or whip stitch into an outfit to change up the look. I mean, I could sit down and whip stitch something to a dress real quick, but I know I'm not going to. Imagine if you had like a whole bunch of shifts, like 6 shifts, and you took each of these accessories and you sewed them to a shift. But just picture it. You could have a shift that gathered up more at the neckline, so you had a little bit of a contrast there, and it would do a good job of covering the bust, so you didn't have to wear a fichu or another neck covering. You could have one with a fichu directly attached to it, so you just had a couple little strips of lace. You wouldn't have all of that bunching. You could have one with the very full sleeves that would peek out a bit at the bottom. You could have one with the tuckers and elegantes directly attached to the shift so that you could decide whether or not you wanted to wear those just based off of which shift you wore. Or you could have a shift with just the elegantes or a shift with just the tucker. So many options. With a sleeveless bodice, you could use a shift that was sheer and had little puff sleeves. With a short sleeve bodice, you could do the exact same kind of tucker border, or you could just trim the sleeves. Or if you really wanted to emphasize the 18th centuryness, you could do a fichu. So yeah, shifts should not be underestimated for their versatility power. One thing that made me really excited about this capsule though is how easy it is to flip between very 18th century and pretty modern just based on styling and accessories. Keep in mind that art I showed you at the beginning that was one of my inspirations. So say you take any two pieces, you can really emphasize or de-emphasize the 18th century-ishness of it all, depending purely on how you style it and the accessories you use. So let's take the red skirt with the brown top. To make it very, very 18th century, we layer them together. We add the Kensington shoes, and maybe we add a shift with a fichu and elegantes. And there you have it, a very strong 18th century look that you could sort of get away with in modern society. But on the other hand, imagine if you approached it differently. Imagine if you layered the bodice underneath the petticoat, and you added a belt instead, and instead of the Kensington, she wore more modern shoes like Oxfords. It's got the same conical torso, but you could very easily wear this in modern day and just look a little bit vintage. Now let's try the teal petticoat and the carnation dress. For the historical version, this would be fairly straightforward. Teal petticoat, printed dress. Let's do that shift. But if you wanted to dress more modern, you could wear the teal petticoat over top of the dress and add a belt, and voila, there we go again. Let's do some more, but I don't think you need my commentary for all of it. Well, that's it for this video. There are so many other 18th century styles that I wish I could have incorporated, but at the same time I'm happy with it the way it turned out. It's kind of simple, kind of more like a beginner's 18th century capsule. So let me know what your favorite combination was in the comments, and let me know what you think about that fabric design idea. Even though I don't have the brain power to respond to every single comment, I do read all of them, so just let me know what you think. And if you haven't already, go ahead and check out my Instagram, because that's where I publish most of my current project progress, and in this project we had a lot of fun as I was kind of posting pictures along the development of the capsule. So yeah, see ya!